In a town like Sunnydale, you must beware of strangers.
Have you ever been with a woman before?
Xander is not in any immediate danger.
Seduction is a powerful weapon. Buffy, next on the WB.
Buffy Season 1, Episode 4, Teacher's Pet, written by David Greenwalt and directed by Bruce Seth Green, not to be confused with actor Seth Green, is the first Buffy episode to focus on a character other than Buffy herself, in this case Xander. It explores male sexuality in a way that tries to be feminist, but many feminists feel that it misses the mark and ends up sexist. I personally think that its main failing is the use of a succubus-like figure, but that there is good feminist stuff largely discounted due to poor entertainment value and overshadowing from the she-mantis. It starts with a fantasy sequence depicting a vampire attack on the Bronze, much like in The Harvest. In that episode, Xander was just a slayerette assisting Buffy, needing to be saved half the time and unable to kill Jesse. In his fantasy, Buffy is a classic female victim in a horror movie, while Xander arrives as a classic male hero to save the damsel in distress. This showcases his hang-ups on gender roles. In The Harvest, Buffy taking control made him feel like less of a man. In his fantasy, Buffy is stripped of her power so that Xander can feel like a real man again, as he assumes the role of vampire slayer, and gets a girl that resembles the real Buffy only in body. Dream Buffy is completely useless and hangs off of him as he saves her and gets to play as the lead guitarist on stage. Feminists tend to regard this scene on its own, divorcing it from the context of the end of the episode and Xander's overall evolution, and they see it purely as annoying sexism. Oddly enough, Season 4, Episode 17, Superstar, which has an homage scene to the fantasy, where Jonathan plays the trumpet and everyone adores him because of mind control magic, does not get the same kind of hate. Possibly because Jonathan gets comeuppance at the end of the episode, when everyone openly hates him, while Xander can't receive comeuppance for something that only goes on in his head, and his character evolution isn't resolved in a single episode. Ironically, Superstar may be more problematic because Jonathan's more rapey behavior is ignored, while the widespread mind control element and his offenses to the Scoobies specifically receive full attention. What also may be a factor is that the episode Superstar is of far higher quality than Teacher's Pet. At least in terms of storytelling, underlining how entertainment value cannot be entirely divorced from feminist criticism because of how it aids the audience absorption of themes and messages. The fact that Teacher's Pet suffers from the show still finding its place makes it hard to objectively analyze it. Technically, the fantasy sequence is cheesier than the show usually is, but what does that mean to a viewer who's only seen 3 episodes? Especially since Welcome to the Hellmouth and The Harvest were aired back-to-back as a 2-part story. How are we to say that this fantasy is significantly different from normal show cheesiness? The strength of Superstar is that by the 17th episode of the 4th season, we, as well as the show creators, already know the characters and setting, so we can distinguish what's normal and what's not, as well as what's presented as silly, and where that may overlap with violation. The Teacher's Pet fantasy is pretty much just Buffy's feminist subversion of horror movie tropes, subverted again to the original arrangement, with screaming girls and a dashing male hero. Considering he's a teenage boy, though, this fantasy could get a lot worse.
I caress her smooth satiny flesh. It glows in the sunset. She gently touches my muscles with her fingertips. She sinks to her knees with a look of loving rapture.
Xander wakes up in science class, where the teacher, Dr. Gregory, is discussing insects. He quizzes Buffy about ants to make sure she's paying attention, but she just gets her information from Willow. In the commentary for Welcome to the Hellmouth, Joss describes how they developed the show unsure which age demographic they would be targeting. I get the sense that half of this episode was conceived of as for younger kids. There's this emphasis on researching insects that reminds me of an educational cartoon.
What are you going to do?
My homework.
Rather bizarrely, the other half of the episode is also quite clearly for older teens, being all about Xander's sexuality.
Have you ever been with a woman before?
After class, Dr. Gregory takes Buffy aside and gives her a talk about her potential as a student. He knows that she has a bad past, a history of delinquency, but he doesn't want her to think of herself as destined for failure. He wants her to ignore Principal Flutie's bad opinion of her, to see her potential and make the effort. And he knows that she'll be a good student. That's a great message in its own right, and it's interesting to see how this impacts the story. Buffy doesn't just brush this off as an annoying adult. She really appreciates this guy's respect, and she seems motivated by his taking an interest in her. And then he turns into a red shirt. Immediately after Buffy leaves, he's killed by the monster of the week, the she-mantis. What's interesting is that he's a single-episode man in a refrigerator, literally. The whole point of his character is developing a connection with Buffy, and then causing shock and grief to make Buffy's storyline more interesting. Joss Whedon is often called a misogynist because feminists believe he loves killing female characters and using the trope of women in refrigerators, in which women are killed off just to be dramatic and further men's storylines. But I think there's some confirmation bias at play here. Joss is influenced by William Shakespeare, and he likes killing off characters to be dramatic anyway. Dr. Gregory's death has a great impact on Buffy in this episode, and that's all he is as a character. Joss's killing seems pretty fair to me. Technically this was written by David Greenwalt, but under the direction of Joss as showrunner. So in a general sense on the show, I'm giving Joss both blame and credit. Later at the Bronze, Xander socializes with two other teen boys, Blaine and nameless token black kid.
Admittedly, it's not a haven for the brothers.
Blaine brags about having had sex with 7 different girls, but that he has standards, making it out that he's successful enough to turn down sex from girls who don't meet his standard. Xander insults him, which causes Blaine to demand that Xander state his number. Obviously, Xander is a virgin, and he lies to say it's hard for him to remember because there's been so many. He sees Buffy and Willow, and tries to get them to pretend to both be his dates in order to impress the boys with his studliness. Now, while Teacher's Pet ultimately says that it's good to wait to have sex, that message only comes at the end. For the duration of Xander's little conflict with Blaine here in the Bronze, it offers the competition to be sufficiently masculine through sleeping around without comment or criticism. It is similar to the scene in Welcome to the Hellmouth where Buffy disparages the notion of being a slut, which Joss only got in there through emphasizing that being a slut is not a good thing. The two illustrate the sexist double standard that sexually active women are hated for sexual activity, while men are praised for it. Feminist blogger Jessica Valenti even wrote a book called He's a Stud, She's a Slut, and 49 other double standards every woman should know. This double standard occurs here on Buffy without any kind of feminist commentary, and is sexist as a result. Willow eagerly pretends to be Xander's date. Buffy goes with it for a moment, but leaves when Angel shows up. Willow immediately starts shipping the two of them, while Xander gets jealous because he thinks that Angel is really attractive. This inspires tons of slash fic, but it seems homophobic to me for treating one man's acknowledgement of another's attractiveness as a source of humor. Xander's jealousy with Angel is a source of great annoyance to feminists overall, but I don't think it leads him down any problematic roads here in Teacher's Pet. Buffy rants at Angel for being rude. Angel, who seems much more like the nice brooding Angel we know and love than the snarky jerk of Welcome to the Hellmouth and the Harvest, comes across here as detached and not really hearing Buffy. He ignores her words but shows empathy and his gorgeous arms, and taking off his coat to keep Buffy warm. This is the kind of sexy Angel that works well in a feminist story, as well as giving balance to Xander's sexuality by honoring Buffy's and giving the girls something to gawk over. Angel is injured. He explains that there's this Freddy Krueger vampire with a fork for a hand, that when we see it looks nothing like a fork. That's extremely dangerous. Buffy needs to be careful. He looks nervous and says he has to leave, which I think is supposed to make us wonder about his story. Knowing his story, though, it doesn't make any sense. All that's relevant here is that he's enemies with the Order of Aurelius, which he already indicated in the Harvest. If they see him talking to the Slayer, that'll make them angry at him, but he's already their enemy, so why does Angel care? And you know what? David Greenwalt invented Angel, so you can't very well say that he doesn't know Angel. The next day, Xander eagerly brings the news that science class might be cancelled because Dr. Gregory went missing. Xander's just focused on getting out of turning in homework, while Buffy really gets concerned. When she asks him if he's sure, he explains that he was informed while ogling cheerleaders in short skirts, so he wasn't paying close attention, but he's pretty sure. A lot of feminists don't like that normalizing reference to boys ogling girls, but I think there's adequate balance given that this comes right after the scene in which all the girls in the audience were encouraged to ogle Angel. I think the only way this reflects negatively on Xander's character is that he ignores the uncertain fate of a teacher when he knows about the Hellmouth. Willow explains why Buffy cares about Dr. Gregory, and Xander starts to apologize but breaks off when he sees the substitute teacher, Natalie French. A bouncy drum beat plays as Xander stares and we get a male gaze shot showing her skin in vibrant colors. A lot of feminists really hate this scene, but I don't think it's really justified. In general, I agree that male gaze shots and a focus on male sexuality contributes to women feeling alienated and centering their actions on appealing to men, but this is Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It is mostly for the female audience, and this scene comes just after the scene with Angel, so it seems pretty equal to me. We'll eventually learn that Xander's being hit with strong pheromones, affecting his judgment, so his open staring isn't much different from Dawn's behavior in Season 7, Episode 6, Him, when she's affected by an enchanted jacket. Honestly, I reacted pretty much the same way when hit with the pheromones of Jensen Ackles and Jared Padalecki at a supernatural convention. I can hardly blame Xander. Buffy and Willow find Xander's attraction amusing and don't help him when he turns into a bibbling idiot again. Blaine swoops in to attract Miss French away from Xander and snub him. Their sexual competition is really no different from Buffy and Cordelia competing for Owen in the next episode, Season 1, Episode 5, Never Kill a Boy on the First Date. So I don't see anything really problematic about it. At science class, Miss French introduces herself as a substitute teacher. Though it hasn't been formally revealed, Miss French is quite obviously our Monster of the Week. Unlike Season 1, Episode 3, Witch, which was full of twists and turns, Teacher's Pet is very straightforward. We're presented with a monster who attacks the science teacher. We're presented with a mysterious replacement science teacher. Gee, I wonder if they're related. As such, everything about Miss French has to be interpreted with the understanding that the audience recognizes an implicit threat, even if the characters do not.
As long as she's out there, she's a threat.